All right, so this is Nathan's Hot Dogs, and as a native Staten Islander, I'm gonna love this one. So they're incorporated in New York and Jericho, New York and Long Island, which right out of the gate is a slight against the company. It's Long Island. There's nothing good there. Started as a nickel hot dog company on Coney Island in 1916. They sell hot dogs and French fries in grocery stores at 78,000 locations, mentioned here on page 4. Um, Marketed for sale in approximately 78,000 locations, including supermarkets, mass merchandisers, club stores, selected food service locations. Um, and their major channels of distribution are as follows. They have a licensing program with certain third parties to manufacture, make, and distribute their hot dogs, sausage and corned beef products, frozen fries, and other products through all the grocery stores that we typically know of, including Kroger, Publix, ShopRite, Walmart, Target, Sam's Club, Costco, BJ's, in all 50 states. And that's how they earn a large chunk of their revenue. Um, their branded product program here provides food service operators in a variety of venues to capitalize on their brand and selling their Nathan's Hot Dogs products. They believe the program has brought appeal to food service operators to deliver to a wide variety of distribution channels. This is basically kind of the bread and butter stuff that they do. This is nothing extraordinary for Nathan's. It's nothing new. Then they have their own company-owned quick service restaurants. The most famous one being the Coney Island location, which they opened 100 years ago. The company's been around for a very long time. Um, They own also through their subsidiary Nathan's famous NF Treacher's Core, the Arthur Treacher's brand and trademarks. For those of you that don't know what Arthur Treacher's is, it's fish, seafood, but in a fast food format. It's kind of gross. But that's just me personally. Maybe you like fish while you're eating on the highway. And so you might like Arthur Treacher's. They're like Long John Silver's, but like a distant cousin of Long John Silver's for those of you that know the brand name Long John Silver's. Um, They have on page 5 here, they mention that they have 216 franchise units, 4 company owned units, including the 1 seasonal unit in 21 states and 9 foreign countries. Um, they are distributed, their packaged hot dogs and other products are offered for sale at 64,000 supermarkets and club stores in all 50 states. I've never walked into a supermarket and didn't see Nathan's hot dogs or Nathan's sausages and corned beef. Maybe I'm just going to all the right supermarkets in some case, or it's a very concentrated area that they go to or that they sell to. Walmart's one of their biggest purchasers, Walmart and Sam's Club. So it's no surprise that you may see them at every Walmart wherever you go. Now, on page 6, they mention immediately the issues of COVID 19 because this is fast food, this is retail. They're located in New York. So right now, right out of the gate, you should immediately assume that the company is not on very good footing because of the closures and the extended and drawn out opening phases up in the north. Done out of safety by all means and all measure, but still putting the company in rather dire financial straits. Their restaurant operations on page 6 here are comprised of 31 Nathan's Famous restaurants co-branded with Arthur Treacher's or Kenny Rogers Roasters menu items, and in 30 and 1 unit respectively. I give a little bit of the brand history here. The hot dogs are flavored with a secret blend of spices provided by Ida Handwerker in 1916, which historically have distinguished Nathan's world famous beef hot dogs. Since their inception over 100 years ago, they've maintained a rather consistent procedure in their company-owned and franchise restaurants. Signature crinkle cut French fries cooked in 100% trans fat-free oil. I'm just kind of touting the strength of what they believe is the strength of their brand and what makes them so unique. They also mentioned they are introducing new menu items here, including fresh 6-ounce hamburgers, pat la frita pastrami, shakes, and a new line of chicken products. The size of the stores range from 300 to 4,000 square feet. They've also developed various carts, kiosks, mobile food carts, trucks, and modular units. Other units generally provide seating for 45 to 125 customers. The mobile ops that they have, the carts, the trucks, the kiosks, and the units generally carry only the core menu items. And these are the hot dog guys that you usually see parked on the side of like Fifth Avenue or something like that up in Manhattan. There's only so many licenses for those Nathan's hot dogs carts. It's pretty concentrated in that area. They believe that Nathan's carts, kiosk, modular units, and food court designs are particularly well suited for placement in all these hard-hit COVID-19 areas. Non-traditional sites such as airports, travel plazas, stadiums, schools, convenience stores, entertainment facilities, military facilities, business and industry food service within larger retail operations and other captive markets. So once again, keeping in light where we are, it is almost August 2020, and the headaches of COVID and the recessionary impact garnered by the closures and various quarantines are taking a hard hit on the company because their main business model is to have Nathan's locations and Nathan's products in high traffic areas. This is not boding the company well just 7 pages into their annual report. Their franchise system includes, here once again at the end of page 7, 60 franchisees, HMS Host, Gourmet Dining, Culinary, National Amusements, Hershey Entertainment and Resorts, Hershey Entertainment and Resorts Company, and Brewster's Real Ice Cream. I've noticed Brewster's in the South. I'm in Atlanta, so I've noticed the Brewster's Nathan's connection early on. I never thought anything of it until it was officially mentioned here. That is a viable and deliberately made strategy. Brewster's is a rather big player for Nathan's, or alongside Nathan's, I should say. Now, they mentioned here no single franchisee was 10% of their consolidated revenue, so it's a diversified stream against one person going into financial headaches. HMS Host operated 11 franchise outlets, including 3 units at airports, 7 units within highway travel plazas. Once again, COVID-19, keeping all things here in that shadow, and 1 unit within a mall. HMS Host approximately had 47 locations featuring Nathan's products pursuant to their branded product program. 23 mobile carts were registered to operate in New York, and 15 Brewster's ice cream shops were selling Nathan's products under the branded menu program. Now moving down to page 8, they mentioned some of their royalty structure and what it takes to own a franchise. They have to, the potential franchisee has to pay a one-time $30,000 franchise fee payable upon execution of the agreement, a monthly royalty of 5.5% on restaurant sales, and the expenditure of up to 2% of sales on advertising. I haven't seen that one before. Everybody has to chip in for their own exposure, which I like. It creates a very team dynamic with all the other franchisees. The initial term of the typical franchise agreement is 20 years. 15-year renewal option by the franchisee subject to conditions contained in the franchise agreement. The 20-year thing is kind of normal, more or less. On page 8, they also on page 8, continuing on page 8, they assist and approve all site locations, all site selections. They provide the architectural plans suitable for restaurants of varying sizes and configurations for use in food courts, inline and freestanding locations. They also establish the building design specification, reviewing construction compliance, equipping the restaurant, and providing appropriate menus to coordinate with the restaurant design and location selected by the franchisee. Nathan's itself does not typically sell food, equipment, or supplies in standard franchisees. Keyword typically. Here they're bringing down their branded menu program. They maintain full control of how the building looks and how it's designed, training and operation manuals in conjunction with this program. All of this lovely stuff here. The operator provides Nathan's with a fee and is required to sign a 10-year agreement, and they don't collect a royalty based on the operator's sales, and the operator is not required to report sales to Nathan's as required by the standard franchise agreement. Instead, the branded menu program is required to purchase products from their distributors, and they earn royalties from such purchases. Page 9, they break down Arthur Treacher's. I'm not going to lie, I haven't seen an Arthur Treacher's in a very long time. They're predominantly northern. Arthur Treacher's, Long John Silver's is I've seen in a more southern. Arthur Treacher's, they mentioned Kenny Rogers Roasters. I've never seen those. I've never seen that product before. Um, Speaking of which, I haven't seen a Roy Rogers in years. Huh. Wonder what happened to them. Whatever. Arthur Treacher's, originally founded in 1969. They are the sole owner of all Arthur Treacher's rights. The brand, exclusive franchisor of the restaurant system, subject to a limited license granted to Pat franchise systems in Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And that agreement, PFSI, as they abbreviate it here on page 9, has no obligation to pay fees or royalties to them in connection with its use of the Arthur Treacher's IP within the PFSI markets within Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. As a result of PFSI's failure to satisfy the development schedules for each of the territories, all future development rights have reverted to Nathan. So once again, they still maintain full control. And they also are co-branded once again here with 30 Nathan's Famous Restaurants. And they operate 6 Arthur Treacher's brand and menu products locations. Kenny Rogers Roasters, they have the right to use that trademark. Have the right to use the Kenny Rogers Roasters trademark for the continued sale of the Kenny Rogers Roasters products in Nathan's Restaurants, existing at April 23rd, 2008, where the products had already been introduced. And these products were only sold within one Nathan's restaurant. So if you find the lucky one, you can try that out and tell me how Kenny Rogers Roasters tastes. They operated 4 company-owned units, 1 seasonal unit in New York. 3 of the 4 company-owned restaurants have been opened with limited operations due to COVID-19. Seasonal location on the Coney Island Boardwalk opened on May 15th, 2020, observing COVID-19 cautions and restrictions. Since 2012, they've been investing significantly in their company-owned restaurants. Their flagship location was rebuilt and reopened after suffering very hard damage from Superstorm Sandy on October 29th, 2012. Same thing with their Yonkers location and their new Oceanside location. All of them relocated, downsized, and reopened. They sold their Bay Ridge restaurant over in Brooklyn in October 2018, and they kept using it under a surrender agreement with the purchaser until January 2019. And the company-owned restaurants range in size from about 2,650 to 10,000 square feet and have seating to accommodate between 60 and 125 customers, open 7 days a week. International development, they mention here, 27 units in 9 foreign countries. They opened 5 units international. Franchisees opened 5 units internationally. 5 new units. Existing franchisees opened 1 in Australia, the UK, Kazakhstan, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, which, going down here, they're breaking down locations by state. New York being the largest, 86 total locations, 24 in New Jersey, 21 in Florida. COVID. Hardest hit states. They have 7 locations in Georgia, where I am, and 2 locations in North Carolina, 6 locations in the Dominican Republic. No idea why. They expect their retail licensing program on page 11 here will resume once COVID finally goes away as an issue, centered around their licensing program with John Morell & Co. John Morell & Co. brings superior sales and experience to their brand through national scale, broad distribution, strong retail relationships. And as a result of that connection, they expect Nathan's to resume breaking into the grocery, mass merchandising, and club channels by expanding points of distribution in targeted, underpenetrated regions and through the development of new products. Nothing necessarily out of the norm here with what they expect to happen after COVID goes away. Their licensing program, John Morell is a subsidiary of Smithfield's Foods. They have the rights to make, distribute, market, and sell Nathan's hot dog, sausage, and corned beef in refrigerated consumer packages to be resold through retail channels within the U.S. They have a right of first offer to license Nathan's products and consumer packages to be resold through retail channels in the U.S. on terms to be negotiated in good faith. The right and obligation to manufacture Nathan's hot dogs and sausage products in bulk for use in the food service industry within the U.S., and the non-exclusive right to supply Nathan's natural casing and skinless hot dogs for the restaurant system in the U.S. The agreement provides royalties on packaged products sold in club stores and grocery stores, payable on a monthly basis, equal to 10.8% of net sales, subject to minimum annual guaranteed royalties of at least $10 million in the first year of the term, and which minimum guaranteed royalties increase annually throughout the term. They earned $22.3 million here in 2020, fiscal 2020, representing 21.6% of total revenues. And the majority of these royalties were from one company. And they believe that the overall exposure of the brand is going to be helped by promoting Nathan's Famous Restaurant, from promoting Nathan's Famous Restaurant patronage. Royalties earned from the agreement to sell Nathan's hot dogs in Kroger, Publix, ShopRite, Walmart, Target, Sam's Club, Costco, and BJ's were 91.6% of fiscal 2020 revenues. They licensed the proprietary spices manufacturing to Saratoga Specialties. And through that agreement, they control the manufacture of all Nathan's hot dogs. Their licensee on page 13, Lamb Wesson, continued to produce and distribute Nathan's Famous frozen French fries and onion rings. I didn't even know they made onion rings, I'll put it that way. I had no idea. These products were distributed within 36 states on the East Coast and Southwest, and they want to expand into the Eastern U.S. and the Midwest. They exercised their third option to extend the license agreement through July 2023, pursuant to annual 4% royalty increases minimum. They transfer the license to manufacture and sell mini bagel dogs, Frank's in a Blanket, and other hors d'oeuvres through club stores to an existing licensee. Royalties earned under this were $10,000, so not a huge driver of revenue. They also have licensing agreements with Herman Pickle Packers, Gold Pure Food Products, and others to make mustard, salsa, sauerkraut, pickles, distributed on a limited basis. I never even knew Nathan's made mustard. Fees and royalties were $341,000, and they had a license agreement to have potato chips created for them by Inventure Foods. That was ended. And they made no money off of that, in fiscal year 2020. Once again, they're talking about their provision of supplies arrangements here. It's very heavily concentrated with John Morrell and Co. Smithfield Foods. They have engaged Newlyweds Foods as their alternative supplier in case anything happens. Their frozen crinkle cut fries have been produced primarily by Lamb Wesson. McCain Foods is the secondary source of supply. Saratoga Specialties would be replaced by Newlyweds, and McCain Foods would be replacing Lamb Wesson if anything ever happens. McCain Foods provided approximately 12% of their fries. And they utilize a cooperative distribution system with Unipro. Their former distribution agreement with U.S. Food Service expired on July 31st, 2018. And the strategic distribution partners now are DeCarlo, Tapia, Cheney, Feasers, Lipari, and Chain Distribution Services, and their branded products are delivered throughout the country by U.S. Food Service, Cisco, Vistar/PFG, and McLean, and DOT Foods. And they continue to have a massive presence on page 14 here, a massive presence in stadiums, which are all shut down from COVID. They have major presences in Citi Field, Marlins Park, Coors Field, Barclays Center, Nassau Veterans Memorial, AT&T Stadium, and Lambeau Field. Once again, COVID-19 is not doing them any favors. Here they break down a little bit their advertising obligation, or the franchisee's advertising obligations. They have to contribute to the advertising fund up to 2% of restaurant sales or spend on local advertising. Everybody has to chip in for the success of the product in one way or another. And their marketing efforts include the use of freestanding inserts, delivering money-saving coupons. FSIs are dropped in newspapers surrounding clusters of Nathan's restaurants in the tri-state area and in Florida. I gotta say, I've never seen the Nathan's hot dogs coupon book, but they are out there apparently. Keep moving on down here. Subject to government regulation, of course. Everyone is. 120 employees on page 17, 43% corporate managers and administrative employees represented by unions. And they consider their employee relations to be good, have not suffered a stoppage in more than 46 years. And currently, they have union agreements that expire, that have expired on June 30th, 2020. From what I've gathered, they renegotiated everything. So far, so good. Employees at a third location are represented by the same union here, pursuant to a different agreement that expires in 2022. Once again, they still consider employee relations to be good. Seasonality, they are kind of seasonal. Sales from their company-owned locations have been highest during their first two fiscal quarters, with the fourth fiscal quarter typically representing the slowest period. And once again, they're mentioning COVID. They can't predict how their summer 2020 financial picture will look. But they still believe that revenues and profits will continue to be highest during their first two fiscal quarters. Fourth fiscal quarter still being the slowest. That doesn't seem to be changing. Of course, competition, they're fighting against every other fast food joint. COVID-19, page 19. Licensing revenue and profitability leans heavily on John Morrell. %77% of their branded product program revenue is from 2 accounts representing approximately 21% each. And they have short-term contracts with these branded product program customers. So it's a very concentrated segment of revenue from very specific groups of people. It doesn't seem to be changing all that much. The cost of food, and they break it down a little bit, food and paper products are about 25 to 30% of their cost of sales. And they purchase large quantities of beef, and beef costs for them 80 to 90% of their food costs. Their average cost of hot dogs were approximately 11.4% higher than the period between October 18th and 2000, March 19, and their market price for hot dogs was about 6.7% higher because of the rise in prices. John Morrell has 3 manufacturing facilities. Remembering it's Smithfield Foods. John Morrell is owned by Smithfield Foods. And they announced the closing of 4 of their plants due to COVID. The only plant that has any relationship to them is the Sioux Falls, Iowa plant. And that's being ramped and back up to full production. The second plant in Springdale, Ohio, never closed. And John Morrell has 3 manufacturing facilities producing different Nathan's products. And they're still saying here on page 21, they've relied on one supplier for the majority of their hot dogs and for their frozen French fries for their restaurant system. If anything happens to them, it's going to be a bit of a headache to just jump over to someone else immediately. Right here, they mentioned minimum wage increases would be a big detriment to them. December 31st, 2020, the minimum wage in New York will increase to $14.50 an hour. increase in labor costs due to new regulations could slow their growth. In New York, effective in 2017, they passed the Fair Workweek legislation. A big component of that was that they have to schedule workers for fast food restaurants at least 2 weeks in advance, or pay employees between $10 to $75 per scheduling change, depending on the situation. And they've estimated the daily penalty for those kinds of contingencies could amount to as much as $10,000 a day in costs. So there is a little bit of political risk because of where they're located. As minimum wage laws continue to change and fluctuate, fast food restaurants have to be able to adapt. And keep kind of scrolling down here, all this boilerplate stuff. They mention here, once again, what I've been saying for the past few minutes. The vast majority of their operations are in the Northeast, predominantly hit very hard by COVID-19. That, and they tend to maintain a presence in high traffic areas because it's the North. You can get away with a successful business model in the North just based off of high foot traffic alone until the world comes to a screeching halt. They mentioned cyber attacks as a potential risk factor, which you wouldn't expect for a fast food location, but that could happen. They mentioned catastrophic events could be the case as a risk factor. No one was expecting Sandy a couple years back, but it did happen, and now the company has to kind of account for that as it goes forward. They mentioned ongoing litigation against Uber and Lyft, those food delivery services, as a potential risk factor because they don't know how it's going to play out. Risk related to their debt, page 34. $150 million of debt right now, due in 5 years. They can still take on more debt, though, as allowed, I'm sure, by their covenants. To service the indebtedness, they have to depend on a lot of cash. And they are rated by Moody's. Their lease agreements here, principal executive offices are about 9,300 square feet. Their aggregate rental expense was $1.6 million, $1,622,000 in fiscal 2020. They have paid 2 special dividends, $5 a share in January 2018 and a $25 share special dividend in March 2015. It doesn't seem like they're going to be doing one for a little while. Or they really don't need to be doing one right now. They need to be saving cash. Selected financial data. I usually just run through that before I finish the footnotes. I want to read and then have the numbers in front of me. I'd rather read all the footnotes first. GAAP and non-GAAP measures, adjusted EBITDA. The breakdown of their issuances, $150 million at 6.625%. Senior secured notes in a private offering. They funded the majority of the special dividend through existing cash. And the interest is payable semi-annually, May 1st, November 1st of each year. And they made their first payments of $4.96 million on May 1st, 2019. They authorized the repurchase of up to $10 million of the notes by the company at par or better from time to time. No set time limit on the repurchases. And here's a breakdown of the rules for the debt. They have to maintain a fixed charge coverage ratio, consolidated cash flow to fixed charges set at 2-to-1. Then priority secured leverage ratio, consolidated net debt to consolidated cash flow, 0.4 to 1. Secured leverage ratio, consolidated net debt to consolidated cash flow, 3.75 to 1. And if any event of default occurs, the trustee or the holders of at least 25% in principal amount of the 2025 notes may declare the notes due and payable by providing notice to the company. In case of bankruptcy or insolvency, those notes will become immediately due. Now, in the last video, I covered Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, and Wells Fargo has shown that they are not afraid to do that and shut the tap off on a revolving credit facility. So in these kinds of times, don't think that the investors won't shut off the company and say, hey, we want our money pay up right now. So the contingency here to some may be by providing notice to the company, will investors do that? Yeah. In the case of Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, absolutely they will. The 2025 notes rank pari passu with all of the company and the guarantor's other senior indebtedness. They mentioned the revenue recognition practices here. I'll pull up my notes here next and see what else I want to bring up. The cost of hot dogs beginning in May 2020 on page 56 increased significantly due to COVID and its effects on the meat processing industry. Their most recent purchase commitment was completed in 2016 for about 2.6 million pounds of hot dogs. The minimum hourly rate for the remainder of New York State will increase to $14.50 an hour on December 31st, 2020, and $15 an hour on July 1st, 2021. Here they mentioned cash and cash equivalents. As of March 29, 2020, cash and cash equivalents aggregated $77,117,000 on cash. And they usually just keep it in money market funds or short-term fixed rate, highly rated, highly liquid investments. Nothing really new or changing on that. Markham LLP is their auditor. They passed the in all material respects section. So at least we can somewhat trust the audit. Same thing here in all material respects. And just to show. Let's skip down to page F9. Inventories are accounted for with FIFO. They break down property and equipment depreciation schedules here. Kind of boilerplate stuff here. I'm going to skip to my evaluation, my roughshod evaluation. What I really just look for at this point is to see if the company is creating value, meaning return on invested capital is higher than the weighted average cost of capital. And in this case, for now, it is. Now, on the financial statements, it does have a negative book value. There is no equity in the company. And the only debt that they have are the $150 million notes at 6.625% interest. So what I did was I took the present value of that debt and used the present value of their leasing obligations to come up with a market value of their debt. And since this annual report was released in June of this year, I almost lean back on it a little bit and go, yeah, the numbers are a little fresher than I would think that they are because of the fact that they are a bit more recently released. Now, working capital, I did current assets minus current liabilities to which is the accounting way to do it. It's not the very clean way that I like to do it, which would be accounts receivables plus inventory minus accounts payables. And if I can, minus accrued expenses as well. That's the cleaner version I like to use, but I decided to use current assets and current liabilities for this video, just because it got me to a more realistic number for return on invested capital. The CapEx is kind of low. They're probably going to rein in CapEx spending over the next few years to pay down their debt as much as possible. Interest coverage ratio, they can only cover their interest 2.3 times over. That's pretty small. The company is in rather tough straits right now to cover down their debt. I got a roughshod debt to equity ratio, which I took as the market value of debt divided by the market value of equity, i.e. the market cap, because there is no book equity in the company right now. Remember, book value is negative. So I did it with market values. Once again, G5, market value of debt divided by G1, the market value of equity. The average years embedded in the lease agreements after year 6 are about 3 years with a book interest rate of 7%. I ended up getting a cost of equity of 5.984% and a pre-tax cost of debt of 4.80%. The company is close to half equity and debt, with a weighted average cost of capital of 3.23% and an ROIC of 34.06%. So right out of the gate, I just want to know if this company is creating value. And my almost acid test for the company is the cost of debt higher than the return on invested capital? In this case, it's not, because I know that if the cost of debt is higher than the return on invested capital, then the company can't be creating value, because the cost of debt has to be lower than the cost of equity. And if the cost of equity is higher and the ROIC is the lowest thing on that chain, then it's not going to be creating value whatsoever. Now, the problem here is, are they going to be able to sustain this? I don't know. COVID's going to have to play out a little bit more for us to try to figure out if NATH is going to survive, quite honestly, or not. We'll have to see.